Thanksgiving at our house was always a mess. Not the fun, movie-type chaos with flour flying and cousins laughing and a dog stealing the turkey. I mean real mess. Emotionally. Spiritually. Existentially. The kind of mess where your dad slams the carving knife down like he's negotiating a hostage situation with the stuffing. The kind of mess where people don't say grace, they say things like, "Well, at least someone remembered to bring something." For as long as I can remember, Thanksgiving was less about giving thanks and more about taking digs. And this year? This year was my turn. Let me rewind a little. My name's Sean. I'm 26, a full-time HVAC technician, and, as my dad reminded me at least once a week, a grown man still living under his parents' roof. Never mind that I paid for most of that roof. Or the heat inside it. Or the fridge, the lawn service, and the Netflix subscription they used to binge romantic thrillers at full volume. Nope. To Dad I was just the Leech. You know, the guy who came home at 7 p.m. covered in insulation dust and motor grease, holding 2 bags of groceries and a 6-pack. A real freeloader. And if you asked my older brother Ryan, golden boy MBA, 3 kids, a wife who called herself a Pinterest entrepreneur, he'd say I just like the easy route. Ryan's easy route included bouncing between jobs, racking up debt, and calling Mom for emergency Venmos twice a month. But sure, I'm the Leech. What stung the most wasn't the insults. I'd grown calluses to those. It was how normalized they'd become. A few months back, when I fixed the busted AC before a heatwave, Dad just nodded and said, "Least you could do." And when I covered the $260 power bill because Ryan forgot, Mom whispered, "You're so reliable." Like it was a dirty secret she wasn't allowed to say out loud. So, when Thanksgiving rolled around, I already had my shields up. The table was stacked: turkey, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce from a can, because Ryan liked the ridges, mashed potatoes, rolls, all of it. The family sat around like a Norman Rockwell painting that had just barely survived a house fire. Ryan toasted first. Something about family legacy, and resilience, and how we all lift each other. He even had the nerve to raise his glass in my direction and say, "Even Sean, who lifts air conditioners." Everyone laughed. I chuckled too. Like I always did. That's when Dad stood up. Fork in one hand, wine glass in the other, he cleared his throat and said, "Let's toast to one more thing." I braced. He looked right at me, not through me like usual, at me. "To Sean," he said. "The Leech. November's your last month here. Time to grow up." Then he took a sip and sat down like he just announced dessert. No one said a word. Even the mashed potatoes got cold. Mom looked at her lap like it was suddenly fascinating. Ryan fake coughed. My niece asked what a leech was. His wife said, "It's a type of worm, sweetie." I didn't flinch. Didn't yell. Didn't cry. I cut a slice of turkey. Ate it in silence. And said, "Pass the gravy, please." Because if there's one thing I learned after all these years in that house, it's that emotion was weakness, and weakness was just more ammo. But inside? Oh, inside I was boiling. Not because he told me to leave. Because he said it like it was a gift. Like I should be grateful he waited until after Thanksgiving to toss me out. Like I was a failed guest overstaying his welcome, and not the one holding the place together behind the scenes. I stared down at my plate, and quietly made a decision. I would not give them a scene. No yelling. No slamming doors. No pleading for respect. But I'd give them something else. Something they weren't ready for. And that would start the second that wine glass touched the table. The next morning, the house was quiet. Too quiet. No blender grinding Mom's kale smoothies. No Ryan yelling at his toddler for finger painting the cat. No TV blasting true crime documentaries at 6 a.m. Just stillness. I laid there in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Dad's words like a song I hated but couldn't skip. "You're a leech. November's your last month here." So specific. So clean. So final. He said it like it was the end of a work contract. like I'd been freeloading office snacks and overstaying my welcome in the staff lounge. But here's the thing about being quiet for too long: eventually, you learn how to leave without slamming doors. I got up, brushed my teeth, and started making mental checklists. Not dramatic ones. Not the kind you post on Instagram with a teary selfie and some "starting over black heart" caption. No. I made the kind of list you make when you know exactly what you've contributed, and exactly what you're about to remove. First on the list, Wi-Fi. The entire family, including Ryan's kids, lived online. I logged into the account. The name on the billing profile? Mine. The router blinked at me from the hallway like it sensed betrayal. Click. Cancel. Effective tonight. Next, utilities. Water? Mine. Electricity? Also mine. Gas? Take a wild guess. Turns out when you're just a leech, you can still cover $600 a month in basic survival. Cancelled. Scheduled shutoffs for December 1st. 3rd, streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Spotify, the entire buffet of digital noise. I logged into each one and changed the passwords. All of them. I even renamed the profiles. Ryan's account became, actually, mine. Mom Red Heart True Crime became Not Today, Carol. And the kid's profile? Lil Moo turned into Asked Your Parents. Petty? Absolutely. But you know what? It felt surgical. Not explosive. Just precise. The way a man trims fat from a steak. By 11 a.m., I was packing my things. And by my things, I mean tools, work boots, my favorite flannel, the old coffee maker they never touched, my toolbox with every socket wrench I'd bought over the years, and a giant duffel of the essentials. You know what I didn't pack? Guilt. Not 1 ounce of it. I glanced around the room that used to be mine, faded posters from high school, a dent in the wall from a long-forgotten argument, the old bookshelf Dad refused to toss because real men read paperbacks. It didn't feel like home anymore. Hadn't in a long time. At noon, I walked into the kitchen. Mom was there, scrolling on her phone with a face like someone just told her the cranberry sauce was discontinued forever. She looked up. "Sean, are you really leaving?" Her voice cracked like she hadn't just let Dad toast to my eviction over sweet potatoes. I didn't answer. Just set my keys on the counter. "Can we talk?" Still nothing. She stepped closer. "You don't have to make this into a thing." And there it was. The line. The thing. They always said that, whenever I had a feeling, a thought, a boundary. Don't make it a thing. So I didn't. I just walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't pack up the car like I was storming off in a teenage tantrum. I just slid into the driver's seat of my beat-up truck, turned the ignition, and drove. And as I pulled onto the street, I looked in the rearview mirror, and saw the house that raised me shrinking into the background. The house I'd kept warm, lit, and running like clockwork. The house I was never really in, not as a son, not as a brother, just as background labor. But now it would be exactly what Dad toasted to. A home without its leech. My new place was nothing fancy. 1 bedroom, slightly crooked floorboards, kitchen faucet that squeaked like it was haunted, and a fridge that made a low growl every hour like it had unresolved trauma. But it was mine. Paid the deposit myself. Signed the lease in my name. No shared fridge drama, no missing leftovers, no. "Sean, can you fix this real quick?" Just me, a borrowed couch, a box of tools, and the kind of silence that didn't feel like punishment for once. When I dropped my duffel on the floor and heard the echo in the empty space, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I cracked open a cold beer, sat on an overturned milk crate, and let the exhaustion roll over me. Not just from the move, but from the years of being the invisible backbone in a house that never acknowledged the spine it leaned on. And you know what's wild? It wasn't even the insults that stuck with me. It was the absence of thanks. I never wanted a trophy. Just, maybe a nod. A Hey, appreciate you covering the power bill. Thanks for fixing the dryer before the guests came. You didn't have to pay for Ryan's overdraft, but thanks. But what I got instead was a wine glass raised in front of the family saying, "You're a Leech." So yeah, no guilt. No regret. Just me and the angry fridge. And I liked it that way. I was barely 2 sips into the beer when my phone buzzed. MOM, 6:43 p.m. Can you check the Wi-Fi settings? Something's off. I stared at the screen and laughed. Out loud. Like a proper sitcom character laughing into a can of beans. Check the Wi-Fi? Sure, let me just remotely enable the internet that I cancelled with extreme precision less than 24 hours ago. While I'm at it, I'll toss in a free HBO subscription and a handwritten apology note from Elon Musk. I didn't reply. Not because I was being dramatic, but because explaining myself would have made it feel like I owed them a reason. And I didn't. 8:15 p.m. MOM again. Sean, your dad can't get the fireplace going. It's freezing. Ryan said it's something with the pilot light? Can you just swing by real quick? I leaned back on the crate and smiled at the ceiling. They thought I left with my bags. They didn't realize I also left with the knowledge. The tools. The invisible glue. Still, I didn't reply. But I did picture them wrapped in 3 comforters trying to stream a Hallmark movie with no Wi-Fi and cold toes. Call it petty. I call it poetic. By 10 p.m., the messages stopped. At least for the night. But my phone had 6 missed calls, 2 from Mom, 4 from Ryan. And 1 group text sent by Dad himself. Which, for the record, was rare. Dad didn't. Group text. He barely understood emojis. But there it was. Dad, family chat, 9:41 p.m. Sean, this isn't how adults behave. Come home. Fix the heat. You live here. That last line made me laugh so hard I nearly choked on a pretzel stick. You live here. Oh, now I live there? 24 hours ago, I was a leech. A financial barnacle. A house pest. But suddenly I'm staff on call? What's next? A name badge and a schedule? The next morning, I woke up around 8 a.m. to a knock at the door. Firm. Repetitive. Rhythmic. I looked through the peephole. There he was. Dad. In his flannel robe. Bed hair. Holding a toolbox. A toolbox I bought, by the way. Paid in cash. Labeled every drawer. He knocked again, this time harder. And for a moment, just a moment, I imagined opening the door and saying, "You're a day early." I thought I had until December. But I didn't open it. Not yet. Because for the first time in years, I wanted to watch him wait. Watch him stand on the porch like I'd stood in that house, overlooked, underappreciated, and asked to work like it was expected. Let him knock. Because sometimes, the only way people realize your worth is when they're left out in the cold. Literally. I opened the door. Slowly. Calmly. Like someone answering a package delivery, not a man who had just tried to evict me mid-turkey. Dad didn't even wait for a greeting. He barreled past the threshold like he owned the lease. "Sean, the gas line's not kicking in," he barked. I tried everything. Thermostat's flashing like it's possessed. I stepped back and let him talk. Not because I respected him. Because watching him flail was oddly therapeutic. He dropped the toolbox on my kitchen counter like a challenge. "You gonna help or what?" I crossed my arms. "I don't live there anymore, remember?" He blinked. Then scoffed like I was being ridiculous. "Don't make this emotional. The family's cold. The kids are shivering. So now I'm family?" He flinched. Just slightly. Then he deflected like he always did. "I didn't mean what I said at dinner. You took it the wrong way." "Did I? You know how I get with wine. And," he paused. "Pressure. Holidays." There it was. The all-occasion excuse pack, wine, stress, and the holidays. I walked over to the counter, opened the toolbox, and picked up a screwdriver. Not to hand it to him, just to feel the weight of it. It reminded me of who I was. "You know the heat works," I said. It's not the system. He looked confused. I smiled. It's the account. I shut off the gas, Dad. You toasted to November being my last month there. I just made it official. He stared at me like I just told him I burned the family tree. You what? I ended everything I paid for. Power. Water. Wi-Fi. Gas. The Leech has unlatched, congratulations. You canceled the heat? In winter? I shrugged. Maybe you should ask Ryan. I'm sure he can Venmo the gas company between rounds of golf. Dad's face turned the color of undercooked turkey. You left your mother in a freezing house? No, I said, voice level. You did. When you raised a glass and called your own son a parasite in front of her. You did when you made a joke out of me for years and expected me to just keep smiling and fixing things like a ghost in the walls. He started to speak. I held up a hand. I'm not angry, Dad. I'm not even bitter. I just finally took your advice. You said November was my last month. I listened. We stood there, locked in the quiet standoff that only families can create. 1 part guilt, 2 parts stubbornness, 1 part unspoken regret. He tried again. You think this proves something? No, I said. I think it ends something. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He just picked up the toolbox, slower this time. Like it weighed more than it did. At the door, he turned and said, You used to be the dependable one. I tilted my head. No. I was just quiet. There's a difference. And I shut the door. I stood there for a second, back against the wood, breathing. That conversation was years overdue. But not once did I raise my voice. Not once did I try to make him understand. I just laid the facts down like blueprints and let him choose whether to build or walk away. And now? Now it was time to reinforce the boundaries. I grabbed my phone and opened the family group chat. Typed 1 line. Effective December 1st, I am no longer your unpaid technician, landlord, or emotional punching bag. Good luck. Then I left the group. The silence that followed? Better than 1,000 apologies. Because silence, chosen silence, is peace. The next few days were oddly quiet. Too quiet. I thought maybe they'd doubled down, wrote me off completely, labeled me ungrateful in the family ledger and moved on with their glorified golden child and his Pinterest influencer wife. But then, like clockwork, the storm hit. It started on Monday. MOM, 9:04 a.m. We miss you. I think your dad didn't mean to sound so harsh. MOM, 9:08 a.m. Also, if you did cancel the gas, could you please call them and fix it? Ryan's kids are coughing. You'd think that line might make me feel guilty. Coughing children and all. But I knew that house. I knew those kids. I knew they were coughing because Ryan insisted on keeping the window cracked. For fresh air. Even in 30-degree weather, while he sat in a hoodie and watched sports on his tablet. Still, I didn't respond. Tuesday brought voicemails. 12, to be exact. Most were garbled. Mom whispering like she was in witness protection. Ryan sighing dramatically and saying things like, I don't know why you're doing this, man. It's not that deep. My personal favorite? We just need you to be the bigger person. Ah, yes. Classic move. Treat someone like a doormat for years, then when they stand up, tell them to sit back down because they're better than this. By Wednesday, they were getting creative. I opened my front door to find a Tupperware container on the welcome mat. Mom's lasagna. With a note taped to the lid. For when you're ready to talk. We love you. Mom. I stared at it for a good 2 minutes. Then I opened the lid. Took out the note. Taped it to my fridge. And threw the lasagna out. It wasn't a peace offering. It was bait. Food had always been her way of avoiding words. Burn a bridge? Bake a pie. But Thursday? Thursday brought the unexpected. There was a knock on my door around 3 p.m. Not the aggressive dad knock. This one was hesitant. I peeked through the peephole. Ryan. wearing a wool coat that still had the store tag dangling from the sleeve and a look like someone just told him Instagram was outlawed. I opened the door halfway. He smiled like he practiced in the mirror. "Hey, man. Can we talk?" I raised an eyebrow. "We are." He laughed awkwardly. "Okay, fair. Look, I know things got kinda nuclear back there. And I just wanted to, clear the air. Did you bring an air purifier?" He forced another laugh. "Look, I get that Dad was a little harsh. Do you?" He sighed. "Okay, fine. He was a jerk. But you canceling all the utilities? That kinda hit hard." "The kids aren't my responsibility," I said flatly. He held up his hands. I know. But Mom's been crying. And Dad hasn't been sleeping. The house is cold. The Wi-Fi's down. They're actually talking to each other now, which is horrifying. That made me smirk. He took a breath. "They won't say it, but they need you. And honestly, so do I." I tilted my head. "That's interesting. Because when I needed this family to just respect me, I got a toast calling me a leech." "Yeah," Ryan muttered, looking down. That was low. There was a pause. Then he looked up with a different expression. "I came here because I have an idea. A real one. Not some let's hug it out nonsense." I crossed my arms. "What if we started something together? A business?" I blinked. He kept going. "You've got the skills. HVAC, repairs, all that stuff. I've got marketing. I can build a brand. Make us a site. Maybe even a YouTube channel." "You want to go into business? With your Leech brother?" "I want to go into business with the guy who's clearly the only adult in the family." I wasn't expecting that. Not the pitch. Not the look in his eyes. Not the tone. And for a second, I actually considered it. But first, I needed to test something. I opened my phone, pulled up the old family group chat, and typed one thing. Who paid for Ryan's last startup attempt? The typing bubbles appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. We all chipped in. "Dad, does it matter?" "Ryan." "Wow." I looked at him and smiled. "Thanks for the offer. But I'm not starting anything new." I stepped back inside. "Not until I've finished ending everything old." And I closed the door. Friday morning, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Didn't think much of it, until I saw the transcription. "Hi, this is Amanda from First West Energy. I just wanted to confirm the unpaid balance for account ending in 8307. We've received notice that services were terminated by the primary account holder. If you have questions about reconnection fees, feel free to." I stopped reading. Primary account holder? That'd be me. Still. Because guess who never bothered to transfer anything over after I moved out? Yup. The same people who told me I was a leech. That same afternoon, I got another email. This time from the property manager of the house my parents lived in. Subject: pending utility liens. Turns out the property's utilities weren't just overdue. They were flagged. And since everything was in my name, the system couldn't automatically transfer anything over without my signature. If they wanted the lights back on legally, they needed me. Not emotionally. Not symbolically. Legally. And I'll be honest, I laughed. Out loud. In my sad little kitchen, over instant ramen, I cackled like a Disney villain on a budget. That weekend, the calls tripled. Ryan. Mom. Even Dad. I stopped reading the messages, but I noticed the tone shift. Gone were the sarcastic digs. Gone were the guilt trips. They were replaced with something new. Panic. "Sean, please just sign the paperwork. Your mother is stressed out. We're trying to resolve this peacefully. Why are you being so cruel? We didn't mean it. You know that, right? You were always so dependable. We need that again." That last one stung a little. Because it was true. I was dependable. I showed up. I paid. I fixed. I filled the fridge. I changed the filters. I caught the bills they dropped and never mentioned it. And the one time I needed them to stand up for me, they let me get humiliated over stuffing and cranberry sauce. So now they got silence. On Sunday, I finally got a knock at the door again. Not Dad. Not Ryan. Not even Mom. It was my aunt. Aunt Melanie. The only one in the family who ever asked how I was doing without making it sound like a joke. She stood there in a beige trench coat, holding a manila folder and a pie. "Hi, sweetheart," she said softly. I opened the door. "Don't worry, it's not poisoned," she added, lifting the pie slightly. "Store-bought. I bake like I text, burned and slightly passive-aggressive." I smirked. She handed me the folder. Inside were all the transfer forms. Utility accounts. Gas. Electric. Even internet. She sighed. "They didn't ask me to do this. I volunteered. Because they won't say it, but they know they messed up. Big." I flipped through the pages. All of them missing one thing, my signature. Aunt Melanie looked at me. "I don't want you to forgive them. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I do want you to be free." That caught me off guard. She gestured at the folder. "Signing these doesn't mean they win. It means you're not tied to their mess anymore. You get to walk away without debt collectors calling you for heat they used." She was right. Holding that folder, I realized I had two choices. Let them freeze and drown in late fees out of pure spite. Cut the last thread, not for them, but for me. So I signed. Quietly. No drama. No conditions. Aunt Melanie gave me a small smile. "Want me to drop this off?" I nodded. She hugged me. It was warm. Real. Before she left, she turned and said, "They're gonna ask how we convinced you." "What do you want me to say?" I thought for a second. Then smiled. "Tell them the Leech finally found something better to stick to." For the first time in years, Monday felt clean. No half-heated guilt texts. No emails asking about overdue balances. No "Sean, real quick, can you fix?" nonsense. I made coffee. Sat by the window. Let the radiator hum without needing to bleed it. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. By noon, I had my phone on Do Not Disturb and a to-do list that involved absolutely no one but me. Groceries. Oil change. Check out that workshop space I bookmarked 100 times but never toured. I even shaved. That's how fresh I felt, shaved on a Monday. But peace in my life always seems to have a 48-hour shelf life. Because by Tuesday evening, he came back. The knock wasn't angry. It wasn't desperate like before. It was soft. Like guilt dressed in cologne. I opened the door, slowly, and there he was. Dad. Wearing actual jeans, which was a rare event, and holding a small envelope in one hand and a six-pack in the other. He didn't say anything right away. Just gave a tight smile. I figured maybe we could talk. I leaned against the doorframe. "Funny. You didn't need to talk when you were toasting my eviction with mashed potatoes." He flinched. "I deserve that. And more." He nodded. "I know." There was a pause. Then he handed me the envelope. I opened it. Inside? A check. For $1,200. Same amount I'd been silently sending every month to keep that house afloat. The gas, the lights, the internet, all of it. I raised an eyebrow. He cleared his throat. "I talked to Melanie. She told me everything. How much you covered. What you pulled back. I didn't realize." That made me laugh. Not a nice laugh. The kind that leaks out of the hole where trust used to be. "You didn't realize? You couldn't hear the money leaving my account every month while you called me lazy?" I didn't think. "No. You didn't." We stood in that heavy silence, him shifting on his feet like a teenager about to get grounded. Then he said something that actually surprised me. "I want to fix it. All of it. I know I can't erase what I said, but maybe we start over." He held out the six-pack like it was some kind of olive branch. Figured we could talk like men. Now here's the thing. In another life, maybe 5 years ago, I would have melted at that. Taken the beer. Talked. Laughed. Told myself people change. Let myself believe that an apology and a refund meant we were square. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I handed the check back. Keep it. Consider it rent for November. Dad looked genuinely confused. You're not taking it? No, I said firm. Because the cost wasn't just money. He shifted. Sean. I shook my head. You raised a glass in front of my whole family and called me a leech. You turned every sacrifice I made into a punchline. This isn't about $1,200. It's about every moment you could have defended me, and chose not to. He looked down. Then, quietly, what do I need to do to fix it? My answer came fast. Nothing. Because you can't fix what you never tried to build. He stood there a moment longer. Then turned and walked back to his car. Didn't slam the door. Didn't speed off. Just left. And I closed mine with a calm I'd never felt before. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean returning to the table. Sometimes it means building your own, and not saving them a seat. It had been 3 weeks since that final knock. 3 weeks since the check. Since the speech. Since I told my father, to his face, that he couldn't rebuild something he never cared to hold up in the first place. 3 weeks of silence. No texts. No voicemails. Not even a meme from Mom, which, in her language, was basically a peace treaty. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for anything. Not approval. Not apologies. Not invitations to tables I was never really welcomed at. I'd started sketching ideas for a solo business, not with Ryan, but just me. Something simple, handyman services, HVAC repair, plumbing, whatever came my way. The difference now? Boundaries. No more. Family discounts. No more, can you just swing by and take a look? If you wanted Sean, you booked him. You paid him. You respected him. And then, something weird happened. I got a notification. New message from Aunt Melanie. Not unusual. But the attachment was a video. Caption. You're going to want to see this. Wait for the 18-second mark. I clicked it. It was filmed at someone's birthday party, from the kitchen. Looked like Ryan's daughter. Balloons, folding chairs, that awkward cheap sheet cake. Dad was at the table, arms crossed, clearly uncomfortable. Mom was fussing with forks. Ryan was chatting with someone about sports. And then one of the guests, someone I didn't recognize, asked loudly, "So where's your son? The one who used to do all the fixing?" Cue the silence. Dad looked up. Paused. And said barely above a mutter, "We don't talk much anymore." He was the glue. We didn't realize until it cracked. Boom. 18 seconds in. Just like she said. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I needed to hear it. But because I never thought he would say it, out loud, to someone else, without the whine or the ego or the excuse of holiday stress. But I still didn't reply. I didn't feel triumphant. Or smug. Just done. And that, honestly, felt better than revenge. A week later, I got one last delivery. A small package. No return address. Inside? A card. Handwritten. "We made a lot of noise. You did all the work. We didn't see it. That's on us." No signature. No names. Just a key taped to the back. My old house key. I set it down. Didn't toss it. Didn't frame it. Just set it down. Because I didn't need to return to prove a point. I was already past it. 6 months later, I opened my own place. Small shop. Neat signage. By appointment only. Taped to the door. On the wall behind my desk? That group chat message I once sent. Framed. I am no longer your unpaid technician, landlord, or emotional punching bag. Good luck. Clients laughed when they read it. Some even asked if it was real. I just smiled and said, "Family business." one lady said. That sounds messy. And I grinned. Nah. Not anymore.